We're live, and we're live. Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Hello.
Those of you who are watching live, thank you for joining us. This is Romancing the Superhero, and I'm very excited. We have people online today in the panel from all over the world, and I'm very excited about that. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them in the chat. Remy Flag is going to be in there to have some conversations with you guys, and then we are also going to answer your questions towards the end of the panel. But before we get started on questions, why don't we meet our awesome panelists? So starting with Amanda, would you introduce yourself, please?
I will. Hi, my name is Amanda Cherry. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am a Seattle area actor and author and wife and mom and erstwhile homeschool teacher. And my debut was a supervillain story that came out in 2018, and I'm working on a naughty little sequel to that right now.
Awesome. Why don't we go with Nancy? You introduce yourself to us.
Hi, my name is Nancy O'Toole-Meservier. I'm a librarian by day, author of superhero fiction by night. My series is the Red and Black series, and it has 2 books in it right now, Red and Black and Black and Blue. And the 3rd book, Silver and Gold, comes out on Monday. So just a week from today. Yeah.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Franklin, why don't we go with you?
Hi, everybody. I'm Franklin Kendrick. I write mainly the Aberrant series, which is 3 books, soon to be 4 books. And I've written various other stuff, but focusing on superheroes right now.
Awesome. Krista, why don't we go with you next?
Hi, I'm Krista Tomlinson, and I live in Houston, Texas. I'm an romance author, and I just published my first superhero romance last year in October, and which is called Blaze. And the next one is Dr. Z, which comes out June 2nd, I think. So I've just started writing superhero romance, but I've been wanting to write it for a couple years now.
Awesome. And Lana, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm probably the only person who's non-American here, but I'm from Perth, Australia, so it's actually 6 a.m., 6-ish in the morning.
Oh,
so I've got my coffee, but I'm raring to go. So I write paranormal romance and fantasy romance. Superhero romance is a big part of that as well. And I also do my own book covers. I was a graphic designer before I started writing, so all of that I do, and I design for other people in my spare time.
Wow, that is really cool. I know a lot of authors who would love to have that talent.
My bank account really wishes I could do my own.
Yeah, it can be very distracting. I tend to, when you're stuck on a story, kind of switch over and you just start designing a pretty cover just to make yourself feel better. And my last series, I actually did 3 covers and I tested them to see which one was more popular, even though I knew which one would be. But, it's all in the name of procrastination. So.
Oh, yes. Someday we're going to have a whole talk about how authors procrastinate. It's going to be epic.
Yeah.
So, and I am your moderator. I am Trish Heinrich. I'm the author of the Vigilantes superhero universe. I do not write romance as a dedicated genre yet. I am thinking of getting into the romance game next year. Very nervous and excited. But there are romantic elements in my superhero books, and I love reading romance novels. Really, I love it. Usually, my brand is more on the high steam level, personally. But I do have friends that are like, no, I like it sweet and clean. So I've been exposed to the wide range. So I guess one of my first questions I wanted to ask you guys is what made you start writing superhero romance? And what in particular do you like about combining romance and superheroes together? So Krista, let's start with you.
For me, it was It's like kind of a light bulb moment because I've been writing romance since 2014, but I've been involved in watching superheroes and stuff since I was a kid, you know, watching cartoons. And it's like, all of a sudden it was like, wait, why don't I just write a superhero romance? And it was like this, it's like, I feel like my bulb was dim and then it like actually went off because that should have been so obvious for me to write superheroes in romance. So basically probably just from just saturated from the MCU and comics and stuff like that, just really just kind of just made me decide to go ahead and combine romance with superheroes and write what I'm most passionate about.
I love that. Lana, what about you? How did you start writing superhero romance in particular?
I'd love to blame Henry Cavill with Man of Steel, but I started writing. I didn't know I loved romance when I started writing. I started writing urban fantasy, and then in Australia there aren't too many writing organisations around, you know. And I joined the local one, didn't really feel like I fit, and then I signed up to RWA over here. And even though they accept everyone, even if you just write romantic elements, I kind of felt free to explore that part, that I really, really enjoyed the romance thread of books. And once I accepted that, I just kind of exploded and went, oh my God, I want to hear more about Lois Lane and Superman and you know, the toll in their relationship that this fighting, you know, this superhero is saving the world. Everyone, it's all great and the battles and everything, but when they get home, what happens then? You know? So yeah, and I just had this idea that came to me about heroes based around the 7 deadly sins, and wouldn't it be great if they couldn't, you know, work properly unless they had someone who balanced out that sin, who represented the opposite of the sin. And after that, I just exploded, and now I can't stop.
I know exactly how you feel.
Yeah.
Franklin, how about you? How did you start writing romance and superheroes together? What do you like about putting romance with superhero elements?
My stories, even when I was like a teen writing in high school, they always had some sort of romance. But like, I just love the two characters. Especially, I've been writing superhero stuff since I was in like grade school. So there was always the drama of not only is your hero afraid to be found out and then like genetically tested on, but they're also afraid to let the person they love know that not only do they love them and they face rejection, but they also face rejection if they say, hey, I got superpowers, and the person's like, thanks, that's not my thing. So there's always been that in the background, at least in all the superhero stuff that I've written so far.
That I like that element, the thought of weaving in that fear of rejection that we all have, and this thought that, well, they're superheroes, they'll never be rejected. But then that's not necessarily true. Like, nobody's perfect. I like that. That's an interesting element to explore. Nancy, what about you? How did you start combining superheroes and romance? What do you like about combining superheroes and romance?
Well, I know that as I've always enjoyed superhero stories, it took me a while to pick up on the fact that one of the things I always liked the most was the romantic subplots that were always in like the comics or the TV shows or the movies that I was watching. So when I ended up coming to the Red and Black series, it was really important that the romance be central. I consider it to be more of a superhero novel with like a strong secondary romance, but I wanted the relationship between Dawn and Alex to be kind of the beating heart of the series. I feel like adding in that romantic element really humanizes the characters more and makes them vulnerable in a really interesting way, and I really enjoy getting to explore that.
I like that. I like it, making it the heart of the story, those relationships. I love character-driven stories. And Amanda, let's hear from you. What do you like about combining superheroes and romance?
So for me, I came from fan fiction. And in that world, if there's nothing obvious to ship, I'm going to go and find something. And that's just how I am. And when I was working on my book, I had included this romantic subplot. Spoiler alert for a panel later in the week, my character is not so heroic. She's kind of a hot mess and a little bit wicked, and she likes that about herself. And so I included this romantic subplot kind of just to be naughty and just to make sure everyone knew how naughty she was. And it turned out to really be a big chunk of the meat of the story of how she navigated this relationship at the same time she's navigating her evil plots to take over the world. And I write really character-driven stories. Pretty much everything I do in a story is because the character made me do it. And it turns out she was really amorous. So right now she's getting jiggy with yet another character in the Cobalt City universe, which is great. It's my first female romance that I've had a chance to really
nice.
move into. So I'm co-authoring that with Eric Scott DeBee, and we are just having the time of our lives with that. So it turns out that I just really, really like it, and I need it in my reading, and I apparently need it in my writing, and my character refuses to be celibate. So that's
so you got to roll with it.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Does anybody else write characters here that are a little on the anti-hero side? Does anybody else?
I haven't yet.
Yeah, I try to, but they always end up, becoming good, and sometimes they're just grumpy in the end.
Okay, I was curious. I didn't know what kind of heroes we had in the room. So that's awesome. We have kind of a broad range a little bit. So Amanda, you mentioned shipping and fan fiction. So I got to ask my next question. What's the superhero couple that you ship? What's your headcanon that you're just like, I will go to the mattresses to defend this headcanon?
I mean, in the MCU, Loki has hooked up with everyone at least once. Most of them more than that, other than the people he's related to, possibly. But my big superhero ship forever, and I hate bringing it back to the hero that is the most done to death in the history of the world, but I was a religious Lois and Clark viewer in high school. I wrote so much Superman Lois fanfic. In fact, I may have been the only person that ever put Lois in mortal peril when she wasn't wearing trousers. I don't know if you all noticed watching that show, but if she had pants on, something bad was going to happen to her. Well, not in my stories. She could be in trouble in a dress. I probably came up with 46 ways to kill Mason Drake. Most of them hurt a lot. And Lois was never sad about it. So that was sort of my superhero OTP. I was just very much like, here's this uber superpowered guy from Krypton, but also from Kansas. And Mama Kent raised him right. And she had all of the relationship dynamic power, even though he had all the superpower. And I always really dug that.
I love that. Yeah, there are some writers that get that relationship really well. You can get it really wrong too, but there are some film iterations that they get it right across the board. Krista, I want to make sure really quickly that you saw Jeremy's message in the private chat of Yard Stream. You were getting feedback, so he muted you in between. And you can unmute yourself whenever you need to. It's the little section on the bottom, right at the bottom of the screen, that you can unmute. I just wanted to make sure you saw that so you didn't try to start talking and then you were like, why can't anybody hear me?
Yeah, I did see him mute me, but I figured that there was a reason, so I thought I'd just be patient and wait. Is the echo still there?
No, I think it's gone.
It's gone? Okay.
Yeah, as far as I can tell. All right, well, now that hold on, Remy's, he says you're good. All right, the wonders of modern technology. So let's go with you now, Krista. What's the superhero couple that you just love? Even if it's not, they've never been written together in a comic book. What's your headcanon? What will you ship to the end of time?
I have so many because I'm super big in fan fiction too, and shipping and fandom. But probably my favorite is Midnighter and Apollo, just because I love their relationship. They haven't been on screen, of course, but they've been in several comics, and I love their relationship. The dynamic between the two, where you have Midnighter, who's just so harsh and hard and out there fighting, and Apollo, he's super strong too, but he's much more calm than Midnighter. And then when they come together, they're just like a regular couple. Like they don't, they kind of put all the other stuff aside just to be together with themselves. So I do love that. And then just probably a bunch of others that people like, Batman and Catwoman. Even though they're never going to actually get together for more than a week at a time. But I do love their dynamic as well. I think they're a great couple. And then, I don't know, there's just so many that I enjoy seeing just for different reasons. Nightwing and Starfire are really good. I like them, both on not on Young Justice, but on the Titans show. I thought they were good. And then in the comics and the cartoons. So yeah, so basically if there's a couple that looks like they've got some chemistry going on, I'm like, ooh, let me take some notes because I'm going to write them a fan fiction.
Absolutely. Nancy, do you have a favorite superhero couple or a ship that you love? Many?
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm always getting attached to certain couples. I'm especially drawn to like the superhero, supervillain romances. That is what the Red and Black series is. So as Krista mentioned, Batman and Catwoman are great. Daredevil and Elektra I enjoy, although obviously it depends with comics who's writing them, or same with TV shows. I just love the idea of like, they're happy and flirty and cute together during the daytime and they're dating then, but at night they're tearing each other down, and like just the idea that your potential life mate and your worst enemy can be contained in one person has always really drawn me in. But I also really like just more like happy, supportive, like very nice and healthy relationships. Like I'm a big fan of My Hero Academia, the anime, and I love Deku and Ochako. I feel like they are so cute together, and I know nothing will come of it because it's like a shonen, it's a fighting anime, and nothing comes of it, those things in those shows. But I think they are so cute together.
That is, I've been hearing so much. Was it My Hero Academy?
My Hero Academia.
Academia. That has been blowing up my newsfeed on Facebook lately. Is there a new season out or something? Because everybody's talking about it. Do you mind letting me in on the secret really quick?
Yeah, season 4 was just out, so that's probably what you were hearing about it. But it's a wonderful show. I have a podcast about it. I'm used to talking about it for long periods of time. But it's about this world where like 80% of the population has superpowers, but our main character doesn't, of course. But he wants nothing more than to be a superhero. And it's about his sort of journey on that and how it brings him face to face with my favorite Superman stand-in ever, All Might, who is wonderfully ridiculous. It's not really romantic because it's a fighting anime, but I highly recommend it. Lots of good ships really good on there.
That is awesome. You are going to have to drop a link to your podcast in the comments on YouTube. Yeah, please do that. Okay, we do have some questions coming in, but I want to finish this one. With Lana and Franklin, I haven't gotten to you guys, have I? So let's go with Lana. What superhero couple is like your all-time favorite? Is there a couple that's not generally seen together, but in your head you're like, no, they're totally together? Like anything like that?
No, Sailor Moon, other side, and Tuxedo Mask has always been my couple. Ever since I was a little girl, I grew up on it. So and it's followed me through. I rewatched the series after growing up, and I found the dynamics a lot different than what as growing up as I feel a strong woman. And then I watched it again, and I found every battle she had, she couldn't win unless she got the okay from Tuxedo Mask to say, "You can do it, girl." And then she won, and I was like, "What you don't need him. What are you doing? You know, keep going. And yeah, so I still love him. And you know, on the flip side, there's also that thing where she does win all her own battles, and he's just there for moral support rather than being the one who takes over and wins the day for her. But the romance thread in that has always been something that I've fallen in love with. But every single romance superhero show or anything I watch, I'm always there for the couple. So, you know, Felicity and Oliver, Olicity, you know, the Flash, all of them. I love them all. So I can't choose.
That is totally okay. I completely understand. When I wrote that question, I was like, gosh, could I even choose? Like, no, I can't choose just one. Franklin, I'm sorry to put you in the last hot seat, but what's your ship? What's your superhero couple?
There are so many. I agree with everybody. My main one, current one for the MCU, I don't know if anyone else cares, but I loved Steve Rogers and Black Widow from The Winter Soldier. As soon as they kissed and went on their road trip, I was like, I want way more of this. And then I was gutted when everything else happened in the other movies, and I was like, no, we're never going to get that.
I was devastated too.
So I would say that one. And then my other one from so long ago that I will never let go of is Tobey Maguire and Kirsten Dunst from Spider-Man.
Wow.
Because all they have to do, and I've watched those movies so many times, 1 and 2 way more than 3, but all they have to do is stand on opposite sides of a fence talking to each other. And I'm like leaning into the screen being like, please, just like go on the other side of the fence and get it over with. You know you need to do it. So those are my like top ones.
I love it. I was right there with you with Steve Rogers and Natasha. I was like, okay, come on, seriously, this is incredible chemistry.
Oh yeah.
And then we were all disappointed. Okay, so Okay, so we have a couple of questions. Scott Morgan is asking, for those with high heat in their stories, or also for those that are more tame, do you ever worry about negative feedback in your reviews in terms of this was too much, this was too little? Is that ever a thought in your head when you're creating these books? Let's start with Nancy.
Very interesting you're starting with me because my books are incredibly clean. I don't have anything more than kissing really. But I read plenty of books with the hanky-panky in it. And one thing I've noticed is when romance is done well, like it's not really a surprise when you get to the bedroom. You can often tell by the way that the books are packaged, with the covers tend to be a little steamier. And also even just with the way that the characters interact with each other, like in a book where they're probably not going to go there, like, you know, they might see each other and go like, oh, you know, they're so beautiful, beautiful, what a wonderful smile. But in a little sexier book, it might be, oh, they're so beautiful, what an amazing butt. Here's what I want to do to it. So I feel like if it's a well done book, they set you up for it. And so it shouldn't be that much of a surprise.
I love it. Amanda, what do you think? Do you worry about too much, too little steam in your books in terms of reviewers or readership?
No. No, I don't. I have some trusted critique partners. I'm very fortunate to be represented by an amazing agent who gives me phenomenal feedback on everything. Once it has made it through my rounds of trusted people, and this goes way back to when I was writing fanfic for free, and I had a beta reader or 2 or 3, and different people I used for smutty fic versus G-rated or PG-rated fic. Once it's made it through the gauntlet of people whose opinions I value, then no. If a thing I have written is not for you and you feel the need to share that in an ugly way with the rest of the world, well, who hurt you? I'm sorry. There are things that are great for everyone. My microphone's attacking me now. And things that are not to someone's taste. And that's fine. And there are enough books out there that everyone should be able to find what they want. I try to be upfront with how much smut is or is not going to be on the page. In my book that you can currently buy in stores, it fades to black, but you know exactly what is going on, and it is discussed afterward. So yeah, I don't worry about the public's perception. There are people whose opinions I value and I seek. And once I know that what I have done is what I intended to do and that I've done it as well as I could, then the rest is white noise.
That's a great, yeah, that's a great answer. It's hard to, it's necessary to shut out and just say, okay, I've written what I can. I'm putting it out there and I'm moving on. Does anybody, yeah, exactly. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to add? Krista, go ahead.
I think by now I'm pretty, my only published works are all very steamy, very high heat. So it's pretty established by now that that's what my readers expect and that's what they're going to get from me. And then also I just make it a point to, and I think most romance novelists who do this, who write high heat scenes, is the sex on the page isn't to be there just to be there. It's tied to an emotion. It's tied to forwarding the story. So they're not just like, oh, well, you know, we haven't done anything for a while, so let's have sex. It's not like that. It's like, you know, we're writing, they're having this because it's tied to this emotional moment. And so that's why they're, you know, that's why they're having sex on the page, or they're trying to express something that they can't say verbally, or they just had a really intense, you know, if it's superheroes, they just had a really intense fight thing and they're glad to be alive. So there's always a reason behind it. So I think that always, the reader, when they get to it, they're not just reading it, you know, just seeing it there just to exist. They're seeing that something is actually happening with the characters as they're having their intimate moment. So,
okay, Lana, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I was going to say, from a cover point of view, and it's about setting expectations from the start. So if you know you're going to have a book with heavy heat and stuff, then that you design a cover that's relevant to it. The difference, I guess, with the superhero genre is that you're not all romance first. You might have hot romantic elements rather than a romance first book, which mine are romance first. So you've got the guy with the man chest on there because that's like a secret code to women all around the world that there's going to be high heat in there. And I never used to want that on my cover, and it took me years to actually finally go, oh, fine, I'll just do it. And you know, I've just, a world of change has happened in the reviews that I don't get the surprise person anymore. And romance readers are really forgiving, so I kind of leant that way rather than the other way. But you see even now in the descriptions of blurbs and stuff, there's a little, you know, little paragraph along the bottom that says, you know, if you like this sort of thing, you're like my story, or, you know, this story comes with high heat and blah, blah, blah. And there's lots of ways you can talk about it in there. So I think sometimes, you know, people won't even read that, and like, you know, what can you do?
Yeah,
but
you can only do so much. You can't handhold their buying decisions. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Franklin, did you have something that you wanted to add, or?
All my stuff is pretty innocent, so I haven't had to have any warnings. But I mean, not really. Sometimes it's too tame for people, where they're just like, get on with it. But I haven't taken the leap yet. So.
Got ya. So actually, this leads into another question that I have. Those of you that write steam, or even just any kind of steam that even leads to a fade to black, what kind of advice would you give somebody that's perhaps, and I'm partly asking this selfishly because I do have this issue myself, who might be kind of uncomfortable writing that, like really wants to write that, loves reading a good, like kind of somewhat steamy, even fade to black kind of love scene. What kind of advice could you give somebody about how to even begin doing that? And Krista, let's start with you. Whoops, sorry, you were taking a attack.
I think in order to get comfortable doing it, I think it helps to kind of really just maybe before you sit down to, you know, just start writing, is to kind of plot it out and see what your goal is. What do you want them to get from this scene? What kind of mood do you want from this scene? Is it going to be something where they're like, you know, all fired up because they're, you know, just fresh off a fight, or is this tender? And then, you know, for me, I write with music for a couple of reasons. One, it helps, block out stuff. But when I'm writing a sexy scene, if I have music that matches the mood of that, it really helps get me into that mindset of where I'm trying to go with that scene. And then I don't even know if I can say this, but watch sexy videos, because you have to make sure that you can describe it correctly.
Yeah.
And just kind of, you just want to make sure that you don't have limbs going in weird places and stuff like that. It's got to make sense,
Yeah.
So you want to watch sexy videos, and then you want to kind of research things and make sure that it actually will make sense to do and not actually be painful or weird. So a lot of work goes into it, but as long as you just look at it as researching like you would any other type of scene, you should be fine. But definitely the music part. The music really helps.
Okay. Amanda?
To dovetail off what she just said, I did at one point read a book called The Joy of Writing Sex. And in it, there are some exercises because I was super duper uncomfortable. I'm from a certain part of the South where we don't use those words. But I found in one particular fandom ship in which I was very, very involved for a while, the characters have a pretty substantial height difference. And several of us found ourselves in possession of some action figures that we would pose in certain ways to be sure that things were physically possible and physically comfortable that we were describing. Because the one thing you don't want to do when you've got a really nitpicky fandom that, like, I wish for us all gigantic nitpicky fandoms that spend lots of money on our books in the future. When you have those people and you know they're going to read your stuff, the thing you do not want is like, there is no way that could happen. She's a foot shorter than he is and she couldn't reach. So, I mean, choreographing on action figures is absolutely not out of the question.
I had never even thought about that. Oh my God, I love it. I've thought about the music, Krista, but I also never thought about the videos. And I did that to learn how to write fight scenes. So it makes perfect sense that you would also could do that the same way. Lana, would you like to take a stab at the question? How, what kind of advice would you give somebody about writing love scenes?
I have this weird kind of analogy. It's the same as writing a fight scene in my head. Each character, superhero authors know how to write a fight scene. So shift it a little bit to the side and you've got two characters who emotionally want something different out of each other. And sometimes a good sex scene isn't something that just, comes smooth sailing and, everything's fine and dandy. Usually both characters want something, and the fact that they're going to have sex is going to move their story along some way. So you can't just have a sex scene that's just dropped in there for no reason. It needs to do something to the story. So, the best ones I've always had is when, they both fighting each other some way in their wills, whether it's I don't know if I love you, or just something like that. It doesn't have to actually be literally that they want different things, but it's always an emotional journey, I think, as it leads up to it, rather than just the mechanics of it. And often the actual writing of the sex scene, you need to not just think about the mechanics, you think about how this act is affecting each character, so as it is moving their relationship forward into a new phase. So I thought it's always a battle for me.
Nancy and Franklin, I know you both said you write a bit more clean romance. Do you have anything you want to add to it at all?
Not really, although I feel like I should be taking notes.
I'll be rewatching this part of the video later.
Of course. I would say even though you can write tame stuff, it is still about the emotions of the characters. So even if it's just characters sharing a kiss for the first time, you have to treat it like it's two real human beings. It's not just like oh, it's just the act of kissing. Once those two characters kiss each other, there is no going back. You can't say, well, I've never kissed you before. So there is still tension you have to deal with. And there's like, are they both into the same action? Is one not interested in the other one? And there's dynamics either way. So you definitely have to pay attention. And it's more interesting when the characters are both kind of like iffy on each other.
Mm-hmm. I love that, because really drilling down for everybody that's answered, it's all about the emotion of the characters. There is an emotional reason or need for these two people to be physically together, however far down that path any of you write that. And I love that. This was, I don't know if you guys can see the comments, the chat kind of blew up about the action figure and the naughty videos in particular. Everybody's like, oh my God.
You're welcome.
You guys blew some people's minds. And I love that. So we have another question coming in. So do you guys have a preference whether you're reading a superhero book or you're writing your own, of a super and a super together for the romance, or a super and a non-super? Do you have a preference at all? And let's start with Nancy.
I feel like both can work, but I feel like when you are dealing with like a superpowered person and a non-superpowered person, it can be really tricky to find a good balance with that. I know from a lot of the things I've seen, the non-powered person ends up being a little overshadowed or overwhelmed or feeling passive. So I feel like if you're non-superpowered person, so they don't have powers, there needs to be something that makes them exceptional in a way. Because that's one of the reasons why we read superhero fiction, is because we want to read about exceptional people. And if you want the characters to be on equal footing, it helps if that other person, there's something about them that really stands out. And it could be a lot of different things. Like, I mean, it could be that they're really funny and charming, or it can be that, they're like, again, Lois Lane, going back to her, like, she's a great reporter. And not only that, but the story needs to then value those exceptional things that they bring to the story. Like, we've all read, good Superman stories that really value Lois as a character, and we've read them where she's kind of just the damsel in distress, and oh yeah, doesn't she have like all these awards and stuff like that? But if the story doesn't make use of them, then it kind of doesn't matter.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I hate those superhero stories where like the female or even the male non-powered counterpart is just there as cannon fodder, or
just a love interest.
There's just the love interest. Yeah. Lana, what about you? What do you prefer? Super to super, super non-super?
Nancy said it exactly what I was thinking in my mind, that I actually like both relationships and both dynamics. When you're writing a long series, all about relationships, you just have to explore every single type that you can find. And both of them being super, or I've got, assassins with a superhero and things like that. So they've got a total different dynamic and relationship problems that they need to face and deal with. And like Nancy said, all of my non-powered people all have something special about them. They're badass in their own way, and they can hold their own with this hero who's, got all these amazing powers and can be quite intimidating, but they don't run away from it. So I liked that part of Lois with Superman. She stood tall and faced everything, and but then I can't really decide. Sorry. I'm no use.
That's all okay. Of it. That's a great answer, all of it. Yeah. I mean, I think I probably prefer both too. Franklin, what about you? Do you have anything to add to the question? Do you prefer super to super or super non-super?
I like them both, but I do really enjoy stories where one character is not a super, but they become a super. And then there's like a power struggle sort of between their love interest who's already a super. trying to tell them, here's how it goes. I've already gone through this. And then usually the love interest is like, I can do this way better than you did it. So it's like, it turns into kind of like a battle of like, who's done it better. So
Yeah.
I haven't read one like that, actually. That's a
No, you're giving me ideas.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I like that.
yeah. Yeah, they do it a
Amanda,
lot in TV shows too, where it's like one character
Oh,
randomly gets powers for a couple episodes, and you're like, oh yeah, they would kick your butt, and you thought they couldn't do it, but they did.
I think Iris got super speed at one point during the
She did.
in the Flash.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I think I might have stopped watching at that point. Oops. Krista, Amanda, do you guys have anything to add?
I absolutely do. If I'm gonna read or watch or experience via media a super with non-super romantic, particularly physically romantic relationship, I'm gonna need to trust that writer before I let myself get into it, because there are issues of agency and consent that come along with one person has amazing superpowers and the other person does not. Now, if it's an Iron Man or a Batman sort of hero that is a hero of their own choosing, who took up a mantle and their power is basically limited to, albeit the outer limits, the limits of human capability, versus someone who can fly and shoot laser beams out of their eyes and freeze you. If you've got those kinds of supernatural powers in a romance dynamic, particularly a cis male, cis female relationship dynamic with someone who doesn't have any of that, then I'm going to need to trust you to not foul that up, to not put these characters that I am really enjoying shipping in a dubious consent situation, because that is a book closer, series ender, never going to pick up your writing again situation for me. So when it's done well, I love super with non-super. But it's a lot of tension in my body leading up to the end of that first book until the author, the creator, the showrunner, the film director has earned my trust that they are not going to give me a Me Too moment and make me want to smack them around.
I want to circle back around to the consent in superhero romance in a second, but I want to check in with Krista. Do you have anything you want to add to the question?
Not too much, because I like both too. There's so many different ways you can go with either one. I think for me, the only reason why not the only reason, I like the character that I created, obviously, but one of the main reasons that I had my in book one, the first the love interest be a regular person, just to kind of give it a window to kind of look into, to kind of be that person who doesn't really understand what's happening, just to that character that they always have in like the urban fantasy, who's like, oh wow, there's this happening, and so they're the one who's going to explain everything to the reader. so I kind of went that route a little bit, but definitely I like both too. So yeah.
Okay, so this is Amanda, you brought up something that I didn't even think about, and I feel like I should have in terms of the questions. Like, I've been reading with everything going on, I've been finding myself really gravitating a lot more towards romance as the genre that I'm reading. And what I'm loving with romance books that have been written in the last several years in particular is a lot of them have a very clear moment of consent and a very clear moment of, oh wait, I don't have a condom. And I'm like,
you don't know what that's gonna do.
So awesome. Like, I think that's pretty cool. So let me throw this out there. And yes, if anybody's watching and you want to put your headphones in because you don't want your kids knowing what a condom is, do that now. Or maybe you do. Maybe this is how you start that conversation. I don't know. But how do you, writing romance, get that consent moment in there? Or do you? Or let's, Amanda, you brought this up, so I would like to start with you. How do you write consent into your books?
I try to start off with having, if I can, if it works for the emotional resonance of the scene, having the person with either less physical power or less relational power be in the driver's seat in that moment. If I can be in their head at that point, So the audience has a very clear understanding that this is what they want, and they are the ones communicating this is what they want to the other person, then that can go a long way, particularly in a limited point of view book. If you make the point of view character the person who has less power in some way in that moment. But also, I mean, you can slip it in really easily. You sure? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Should we go downstairs right now? Like, it doesn't have to be complicated, and it doesn't have to be written in legalese. You just have to make it very clear, either from context inside a character's head or from some exchange between the two of them, that consent is happening. And then once your two characters, people who write series here know this, once your two characters have been shagging and do so kind of on the regular, then certain body language and certain physical cues can certainly stand in the stead of verbal consent. Because every time I nibble on your ear, you know that that's a question.
Yeah, exactly. So Nancy, writing cleaner romance, do you write that moment of consent in there, or do you have it after? How do you handle that?
Well, I think what's important whenever you're dealing with, just having clear communication between the characters. Like as Amanda mentioned before, they don't necessarily have to be long and complicated. Sometimes they are. And before the first kiss between my two main characters, they have sort of a long, drawn-out conversation about their own faults. But just having that clear communication between the two characters, and that's usually what does it for me.
Awesome. Lana, do you have anything to add?
I think when written the right way, you can make the consent issue quite a caring issue, where one of the characters actually, whether there's some issue in the past, and, in romance, we're all kind of psychologists talking about some deep, dark, issue from their past and things like that. But usually, sometimes that point, when they get to that point, can be a big turning point where the hero or the other person, brings up the consent different they know that it's a big deal about the other person, even if they're too afraid to talk about it. So yeah, there's lots of different ways to approach it, and it can be you just got to make sure you put it in the right spot so it doesn't detract from that heat of the moment. So yeah.
Krista, Franklin. Krista, Franklin, do you guys have anything to add to the question of consent in your romance books? How you write that? How you put that in there?
I agree along the lines of what Amanda was saying, is that it doesn't have to be a big drawn out thing, especially like if you're in the point of view of the person who's not the weaker character, but the one that has the most to lose. If you're making it clear that they're into it, then that just kind of does a lot of the work for you. But definitely if you're just, saying something, oh, do you like this? Yeah. I mean, you don't really need to go too much further than that, because it's clear if the person wants to be in the situation that they're in. So so I don't think it has to be a big drawn out thing, or you have to have them sit down and discuss, unless there's some other issue that's a part of the storyline. Really just enough for them to, express interest and their enjoyment should be fine.
Franklin, anything to add?
I don't spell it out usually, but I do wrap it up in like a profession of feelings beforehand. So it's kind of like, I'm telling you how I feel. If the love interest refuses, the main hero will know.
Do any of you, and anybody can kind of raise their hand to answer this. This can be one that if you want to answer, fine. If you don't really have anything to add to it, that's okay. As kind of a follow-up, do you write that moment of, do you have a condom, into the story? Because I've read so many romance books, like I said, written in the last couple of years, that are starting to include that. And I find that I personally find that really kind of awesome. Do you feel like you need to include that, want to include that? Who wants to take this one on? Go ahead, Lana.
I can say my journey to becoming a romance writer, when I joined RWA, it's always been a hot topic at the conferences. So for a long time, and with all the Me Too stuff, I think I was lucky that I came into the genre at a point where it was such a conscious thing, and so there was a lot of learning and a lot of talking, and I didn't feel like it was something that was weird, or different. To me, it was always there. So I think in the romance community there has been a big shift in recent years in using our powers responsibly, as romance authors, to make sure we're setting the right message. But there's also a whole shift the opposite way, which we won't get into today, but it's a whole nother it's really interesting what's coming out at the moment, and the way people explore worlds in their fiction and things like that. So I personally like the fact that I'm clear with everything, and I try to be, all because that's the way I would want to be myself if it was me in the story. So yeah, it's definitely been a huge shift, I think, and for the positive, a lot of people would say. Yeah.
Anybody else want to add to that?
If I was ever going to write hanky panky with characters that are not inherently protected by magic, then I would choose to include those kind of elements. It just so happens that in my limited smut writing, I have people who are absolutely protected by magic, and that it has been called out before. And then in my past as a fandom writer, I tended to write in worlds where such a thing had yet to be named. So it didn't exist. There were other methods for those things. So I have not, but I've thought about it. And it's definitely something that I will keep in my toolbox. And I sort of practice what those conversations might look like in a moment, if the time ever comes when I'm writing on actual planet Earth and any of the characters don't have magic powers.
Anybody else want to add to that at all? Because we have one more listener question that's come in. We could go to.
No,
okay. So Nicole Eck asks, do you find superhero romance series can be a different couple each book, or do you think it's better to keep the same couple over the course of the series? And let's go with Franklin.
My main couple has been the same for all of my books that I've written. But as a reader, I would say I love the long game. I love to follow seasons of television, long series of books, with the characters either on their way to getting together or getting together and then trying to stick together. So I would say the long game, absolutely. There could be a place for having spin-offs with new characters, but once I have my couple that I'm rooting for and maybe a couple side couples, like, I want to follow them.
I feel very similarly. I'm kind of straddling the fence actually on this question because I like a little bit of both. Nancy, how about you?
Well, I enjoy reading both, but when it comes to my series, it is following like one couple through several books. And part of that is similar to what Franklin said, like, sort of staying there for the long haul. And also, as writing a secondary romance as opposed to the main focus, I can't always focus on those relationship steps as much as I want. So by sort of drawing it out over several books, like, you can have the first kiss, the I love you moment, and so on and so forth over time. And also it could be just due to the fact that, I have been with the same person since I was 18, and which was quite a long time ago now. So I am used to relationships like that. But I'll read both.
Okay, awesome. Lana, how about you?
My series is like what Nicole was asking. I've got a separate couple in each book. So the whole series is based around a superhero family, and each book focuses on the journey of one of them and their romantic interest and how they get together and overcome their own personal demons. So I have an overarching plot that goes through the whole series with the baddie, my baddie plot. So yeah, I really like I read both, as well. But for this one, I wanted to hit the romance reader tropes more than the superhero tropes. So I was aware going into writing the series that I didn't know anyone like me who liked superheroes as much. So, but I knew plenty of people who loved romance. So I thought, okay, so if I make sure that I structure my book this way, I'll probably pick up more of those readers than not. And I found out I really enjoyed writing that way. Now I don't write any other way. So I like the excitement of learning a new person every single book, and the new problems and challenges. My first series was one couple all the way, but yeah, so I think there's definitely room for it. I do it.
Krista, Amanda, do you guys want to add anything?
For me, I like to read both, but I definitely prefer to write separate couples in each book, because when you create this cast of characters who are all on this team and they're they have all their cool powers and their different personalities, and you have the chemistry between them, I want to give them their own story, so it's really hard to resist that and just kind of decide not to give these separate characters their own book. So I definitely like to write different couples. And then if you're going at it with the main goal of romance, and then the superhero is like the side part of it, the book ends with a satisfying conclusion to their romance. They've got their happily ever after, or they're happy for now. And so it's really hard to kind of really decide what you're going to do with that in the next book, because your readers have already seen their romance come to their conclusion. So in the next book, if you're still you can't change from romance to something else. So if it's still a romance series, what is going to be that push and pull that the readers are expecting from you? And so it would be kind of tough to to just throw random things at them to break them up and then bring them back together. I mean, it does happen and you can do that, but it would be kind of difficult to do that for 7 books, book 6 now, we're upset because one of us wants superpowered kids and the other doesn't. Now in book 7, oh, I've been captured and they've got to find me. And now in book 8, I mean, it's hard to really keep thinking of reasons to break that couple up, and to have that tension so that they're, when they come back together at the end of the book, they're happily ever after is satisfying again. So I think for me, I would, since I'm a romance first writer and then the superheroes, it's probably always going to be different couples, unless I did something shorter, maybe like a serial or something, then it would be a little bit easier to kind of maintain that tension throughout.
Got ya.
Yeah, I write in a shared universe, and I am the happy homewrecker of Cobalt City. I, at the beginning of my book, broke up the couple that had been together since the advent of the first Cobalt City story, and I was ready for the rest of the authors to hate me, and they were like, "Oh my God, somebody had to do that. It was getting so boring."
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think all long-term happy marriages are boring, but this one was. So yeah, I hooked my character up with this guy who had been the city's least eligible man, and that worked out for a minute, and then it turned out she was lying because, again, spoiler alert, she's not nice. So then that happened, and then they broke up, and so now she is once again unattached, except she's still shagging an immortal friend of hers, and now in this next book I'm working on, her ex's ex-lover is coming to town, and if ever 2 characters deserved each other, it's these 2 women. So I am weaving this very tangled web with supers and sorceresses and billionaires and gods, and what I really like is Cobalt City is a very small shared universe, but we have a really amazing dedicated fan base, and there are already little teeny tiny ship wars, and I love it so much. No, I like these 2 together, and no, I like these 2 together, and it's like, oh, but when so and such and that third person get together, oh, that's the fireworks. So I don't mind reading one couple staying together if it's good and if there are, as Krista said, ways to keep the tension happening. But I really like it when there are infinite possibilities and you're always guessing who is, and whether or not the action is going to happen, who's having what feelings and who's asking what questions to themselves. And when I look at this person who hurt me, how angry am I versus how tender do I feel toward them versus how bad I feel about screwing them over. So those are all the fun, meaty, juicy relational questions that I like to play with.
I love that. And I can't wait now to read that book. I'm so excited. I loved her in that first one. I was like, oh, she's so bad and I can't help rooting for her. I hate it. And I love it at the same time. So our final question is a fun one. At least I hope it's a fun one. What's your favorite superpower in the bedroom? What's that superpower you're like, that'd be really fun to write in the bedroom? And this is one that actually it comes from Jeremy, from Remy. He's like, this is a really fun question. I'm like, oh my gosh, that is a really fun question. And if you're uncomfortable answering it, you don't have to. But do you have a favorite superpower in the bedroom in your books?
I haven't really used them, surprisingly. They're always there, but I think it came down somewhere in the back of my head. There was that power play sort of thing, but I think that my next book I am doing something because it is the deadly sin, lust. So I've kind of got to do something a little bit exciting, and it's a girl, so I tried to subvert all the expectations that you would expect in this one, and she's going to have something to do with pheromones, I think. So I'll have to see how exciting that happens. But you do see it kind of, a little bit on TV, like Black Lightning with his lightning fingers. They've always been a little bit exciting, and the Flash has got super speed, so that would be a dream. But we know why Iris is with him.
And not to take it back to Star Wars, which is where I usually wind up taking things, but if I could use the Force, just telekinesis, I think, would be very, very helpful in an amorous situation. If you, again, as long as you had consent, you're out at the club with your sweetheart and they're at the bar getting drinks, and you can cop a feel from clear across the room. Yes, please. Or you've only got 2 hands, but you kind of have the ability to make it feel like you have 4 or 5 without inviting technology or any other people to play. I think that could be super fun.
Yes, absolutely.
Mind reading, I guess. You always know the girl one.
Exactly. Krista, do you have any opinions?
Yeah,
dreams?
I do. My favorite one, I can't say yet because it's for a book down the line. But in the first one that I just wrote, like Lana mentioned with Black Lightning, I do have my character, his electric power, and he does use his electricity in the bedroom because it's a light kink BDSM series. And so that is an actual thing, like with violet wands that they use as sensation play. And so he just kind of cuts. He doesn't need to get a violet wand because he's got electricity in his hands. So, so that was one that I really enjoyed writing. And it's so funny because I had already written the book when that episode aired where they're showing Black Lightning and his wife, and he's got, he's touching her back with his electricity. I was like, oh, I wrote that. It makes sense. So yeah, so that's one that I really like, and the other one I can't share yet.
Okay.
I'm hitting the pre-order button right now.
Yeah, exactly. Nancy and Franklin, I know you guys, you write a little bit cleaner, but is there any hints when you fade to black that there has been superpowers used in the bedroom?
Not in my books. I did think about this question though when you brought it up, and it's funny. You could tell that I'm someone that doesn't write sexy scenes because I just came up with all like the really bad superpowers in the bedroom, like super strength. You might end up hurting someone, and mind reading's not good. You think you want to know, but you also don't want to know every time. They're like, oh, did I leave the stove on? I have this weird itch. But I thought maybe the best one would actually be being able to stop time. Because I remember what it was like to live in a little apartment where your neighbors are right outside your window all the time and everything like that. But just being really busy, just being able to carve out as much time as you need. for your significant other is very valuable.
I never even thought of that one, to be honest. Like, yeah, I could use that right now, actually. A house full of kids, yeah, I could totally use some time stoppage. Or maybe some, like, you know, putting them to sleep in a nice, deep, comfortable sleep with the sound of my voice. Yeah, that would be really good. Okay.
Well, my two characters, one has electricity power, so I have plenty of ideas now after listening to everybody. But I do have my other character learns how to do mind reading, and that has come in, not in the bedroom, but it has come in handy for their relationship. So a lot of like easing the fears of your partner, where it's like, just get out of your own head. I'm in here with you. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Well, we are out of time, and I'm looking. Remy, is there any other questions you want to throw up really quickly? While I'm waiting to see if he has anything he wants to throw up for us at the end here. Why don't all of you, starting with Nancy, why don't you tell us where we can find your books? Go ahead, Nancy.
Sure. You can find my books, the Red and Black series, Nancy O'Toole Meservier. They're on sale on Amazon. You got ebooks, paperbacks. I'm on Kindle Unlimited as well. And you can find my podcast. It's One for All, and it's on all of the normal podcast platforms. And I have a website, nancyotoole.wordpress.com.
Awesome. Lana, what about you? Where can we find your books?
On Amazon, basically. That's where I am, unless you want print, and you can find them at a lot of online print places. So because my name is super hard to say and spell, usually you can just put in Lana P and it will start coming up on Amazon search bar, or the Deadly Seven. So yeah.
Great. Krista, how about you?
My books are also on Amazon. I'm in KU for my ebooks, and my paperbacks are there as well. My superhero romance paperbacks aren't on Barnes & Noble and the other sites yet, but they will be. And you can also go to my website, which is KristaTomlinson.com. And there I have like little tidbits and one-shots and just extra little head canons. And I made a page that shows all of my superheroes and all their powers and cool stuff like that. So you can check that out if you'd like to see it.
Awesome. Amanda, where can we find your books?
I am at thegingervillain.com. On Twitter, you can find me at Manda the Ginger, and I tweet a lot about writing and also about Star Wars. And you can find my book on sale on Amazon, IndieBound, Barnes & Noble. There are a few small independent bookstores that stock it actually on their shelves, which, let me tell you, that feeling walking into a bookstore, seeing your book there, highly recommended. But you can always ask your local bookstore, your local library, if you are really in a pinch and not a member of Kindle Unlimited. You can also email me, author@thegingervillain.com, and I still have a few PDFs for 2020 that I can send out for free. So if you're really interested in reading, email me, and I can probably hook you up in exchange for an honest but not too unkind review.
Awesome. And Franklin, where can we find your books?
You can find my books also on Amazon. I have ebook and print, Kindle Unlimited for me as well. And I also have my website, franklinkendrick.com, where I do like posts when I can. And there's probably some excerpts and a bunch of cool stuff there too. So check it out.
Awesome. And we just shifted boxes around a little bit. You can also, if you're watching, you can also go to superherofiction.com, and you can find all of their books on superhero fiction, as well as a bunch of others. We now have over 300 superhero books on there of every kind of subgenre and tag that we have possibly been able to think of. So that's superhero-fiction.com. And I just want to say thank you to everybody for being here. This was so delightful, and thank you everybody for watching.
Thank
This was
you, and
you.
thanks Silent Remy also for you guys did a lot of
Yes.
work setting this up and moderating it and making this happen. And I'm probably speaking for my co-panelists when I say it's always awesome to get to come and talk to other writers and talk about what we do and be silly and show off my action figures. So
yes. Absolutely. It was so wonderful. I've met a couple of you, but it was great to meet the rest of you face to face. So thank you guys so much. And Remy, I don't know if I have the capability, we did not discuss this prior, to ending the live stream. One of the few things we didn't think about. But anyway, if you're watching, he says, I got it. Okay, good. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.